Hello, everybody. It's Paul with reporting live from my sofa. I am on a sofa today, just not my sofa. And so I was sitting here flipping through my phone, the news, and I just saw an article come up. And at this point, it's 13 hours ago. But I said, stop what you're doing, get the camera out, and make a video. So, Making a Murderer, Steven Avery is won an appeal. I literally was at the point of thinking, you know what, it's not going to happen. This is going to be the one case that this new attorney of his is going to be like, you know what, couldn't get it. You know, because it's so everywhere. And there's just so many different aspects to this. So, definitely, go look it up, check it out, whatever. I'll try and drop a link to what I found, the article that I found. But essentially, what it's getting at is the argument that's been going on recently is the bones. And because there was bones found on two different places, and one place being not his property, pardon me. Basically, his law attorney is like, "Well, do we test those bones for DNA?" And they never did. And then they gave the bones back to the family, which I definitely am just like, "Well, why?" I mean, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, it's just with all the stuff that has surrounded this case and this guy, both of his cases, I'm just like, if you're this confident, dot your I's and cross your T's. Um, and so, yeah, so they won the appeal on that. So it'll be very, very, very interesting to see what takes place now. This is, because honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I binged so hard on Making a Murderer, season one, season two, and been trying to figure out like, okay, how do I want to even get into doing videos for that? Because I'm kind of just obsessed with the Watts case right now. And I just felt like, okay, I know all I know about the Steven Avery case. I'm sure there will be a season three. Obviously, now there will be. Um, but I was just like, I don't even know how to begin to make videos about it because it's another one of those, like, where do you start? There's so much to say. Um, I do think that definitely, I mean, there's two, hold on, let me stop. There's two things that go on with this case. There's Steven and then his nephew, who is also, serving life or whatever. And so, pardon me, that's where it gets complicated, and complicated in the way of, do you think they or one or the other is innocent of the specific charges with Teresa? And, I mean, for me, it's very complicated when it comes to Steven because I literally go back and forth. His nephew, I feel like I was heartbroken when his nephew lost the appeal. I feel like the nephew is total collateral damage. Um, and I'll say why I feel that way. Right now. I feel like, he's a little bit slow. I feel like the things he was saying didn't really add up to a lot of the evidence that was presented. And so if you watch the interview, the interrogation, I mean, I just felt like they were spoon feeding him. And so that's the part that I'm like, really, I'm just not buying it. It's very difficult to wrap one's mind around like how do you get all these false confessions? I do believe they are a thing, clearly because so many people have been exonerated with DNA. Um, and so this case specifically for me is very tricky because Stephen Avery already went through this drama once. And so on both accounts, whether you think he's guilty or innocent, framed, whatever, it's very difficult to sit here and say, like, if you're going with the he was framed narrative, it's like, oh, how in the world would this happen twice in the same town? Like the people framing him can't be that, transparent about it. Like, I mean, it's obvious you did it once, like, don't do it again. And then you can form another argument like, well, they were gonna have to pay a lot of money. I mean, it made them look really, really bad. Then if you go with the narrative of, he's guilty, it's, okay, he got away with murder once. Why shouldn't I say that? I mean, he didn't murder that woman. He got away with being framed for murder once, getting ready to get a huge payout. Why in God's name would you go and kill this woman and dispose of her body on your property and all of the allegations that were there? So that's where with Steven, it just gets very complicated to me. Now, one thing, and I think this is true with any documentary, any docu-series, that type thing, excuse me, I think that by nature, they're going to be biased. And when I say biased, I don't really mean that in a negative way. But I mean, most documentaries are, a good documentary to me presents evidence and says you make up your mind, but those are few and far between. Most of them are trying to sell you on some narrative. And obviously, Making a Murderer is all about showing you how he's framed. And so when I watched that one, I'm like, oh, let this man out of jail immediately. Does that mean that I think he's this wonderful, upstanding person? No, not really. I think he's, there's some very questionable things that he's done. Um, you know, that I'm like, ugh, but you can't convict somebody on those things. Um, so recently, now that I started my YouTube channel, I was just like, you know what? Let me really start looking into, like, I've based my opinions on the Netflix documentary. Let me start looking into my, uh, like the actual court documents and things of that nature. Because when you look at, like, the prosecutor and whatnot, and the people who are involved in that case who have come out like and done interviews, and they're like, "Well, it paints a picture. It only paints a picture that they want you to see," and yada yada yada. And so I'm like, okay, well, let me look at both sides of the story so I can make an educated guess. Because if I just watch the documentary, I mean, I'm definitely like, oh no, this guy's been completely framed. So I will say this. So this, and I mean, I'm not going to really get into it this video. I was just excited to see, oh my gosh, like there's been some major, breakthrough with this case. So something else is happening. Um, Season two, when it first came out, I mean, I ripped through it in one sitting. Um, the alternative theory that she brought up, that they did the playing out of, you know, is the timing right for basically where she's blaming his other nephew. I mean, that really held a lot of weight with me, because I was just like, this is plausible. And like she said, if you want to, you have to present another narrative. If you're just trying to say, oh, well, Steven didn't do it, and we don't know how he didn't do it, but we don't know who or what happened, but we know he didn't do it. Now you had to present something else. So when they did that whole play-by-play thing of the nephew. Hello again, it's Paul. I had to splice these videos together because my memory ran out, and so sorry for all that. I always try and do these in one sitting so that I don't have to sit here and do all the editing and whatnot. So when I get fancier, I'll learn how to do that. So anyways, so let's go back to the theory about the nephew. So when she presented the alternative theory of like, this is how the other nephew could have done it, I mean, I was kind of like, I can totally see that. Mostly because there's just a couple of things with that nephew that I'm just like, there's a lot of things that the documentary did leave out, whether they are like the first season that gets answered in the second season. So, with the nephew, and it's like, okay, so they had all this stuff on his computer, which if I'm correct, and then reading between the lines, I'm like, I think he had some pretty freaky, like illegal porn on there, bad stuff. And I think that the cops held that over his head. Whether it was, I mean, see, I just go all over the place with this. Let's say he did murder them, and then the cops were, because I'm just like, I mean, can people be this crooked? And the cops are basically like, we know that you did it, but we're gonna frame your uncle because we're gonna owe him all this money in this lawsuit. Yeah, I mean, part of me is just like, that is so absurd. But I mean, I'm sure that this kind of stuff happens. But so we'll just leave it at that. So the theory that was presented with the nephew, I was like, totally buy it. Other things about that theory that made me say, was the whole car thing, where it was like the person spotted the car, reported the officer, and then the officer calling the car in. Like, I just found it really weird, that I'm just like, why would Steven, I mean, I guess it all comes down to that. Why would Steven put the car on the property, put a limb over it? You know what I mean? I mean, it was just so haphazardly done. And then the search team person immediately go to it. Like, just out of all that stuff, just seemingly know right where it was. I mean, that part just gets me. Now, the comment that I just made about the random person coming forward and saying, hey, well, I spotted her car, and it was, in this location, and I remember talking to that officer, whatever. Like, I've looked up other things that are saying, people are saying, no, well, it turns out that it wasn't that car and it wasn't this. So there's always something to counter each little bit of evidence, and that's where I just get in a tailspin. And I'm just like, I don't know anymore. I'm just so literally I've avoided making a video on it because of this very reason, because I'm just like, I don't know. Like, at this point, when people are like, do you think Steven's guilty or not? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't. So that being said, I am a firm believer in a fair trial. At the end of the day, especially in this day and age with DNA and the technology that we have and all that kind of stuff, I mean, we can see, pardon me, how many people have been put to death for crimes they didn't commit or spending their life in prison. I mean, before we had all this, God knows how many innocent people were killed. So I am very big. I think in these cases, and any kind of cases, that the state has the power, and I think that they need to be held up to a high standard so that that's not abused. And we see a lot of abuse going on in the judicial system, and there's really no fallback for that. I mean, there's like, okay, well, sorry, and a lot of times, of course, people end up signing plea deals so that they can't come back and sue. And so I just am very big on a fair trial. A huge example of this, and I'm not going to go into it in this video, I'm just going to say it because I can't wait to do a video on this, is the staircase. That actually happened here where I live. Like, I've driven by the house, the whole 9 yards. And I have very strong opinions on Michael Peterson as well as Dwayne Deaver in that case, and I'll do a totally separate video on that. But again, I just have very strong feelings in that. So do I think that what's his name, Steven Avery, got a completely fair trial? I mean, not all the stuff that's coming up, I'm just like, and I mean, honestly, how could you? I mean, the fact that it was held in that same town, I mean, just everything about it, I'm just like, no, why? I mean, no one needed to have anything to do with that investigation that had anything to do with his previous case. When it came down for a trial, he did not need to have any local people there, any of that stuff. So, and then when I started seeing this stuff very recently about the bones, and I mean, I too am just like, okay, so you found these bones in a different site, which does bring up all these questions. Like, okay, well, why would he kill her somewhere else and then bring the bones back? Like, it doesn't, make sense. I mean, to me, it doesn't. And then why wouldn't you, if you're giving the bones to the family, saying that these are Teresa's bones, why wouldn't you have tested them to make sure? I mean, it just all contradicts itself, and it does bring up, like, well, yeah, we need to look at this. So that's that. I wanted to do this real quick. Hopefully I can get this out. I have a couple of other videos lined up to do. I'm literally like, when you talk about obsessed, I'm obsessed with this case. And so now that it's getting fired up back up again, I want to definitely explore this. So please, again, I'm totally open to hearing other theories. Like I said, a lot of my opinions right now are based on the documentary. So I need to get other points of view to make a truly educated guess, because this case is complicated. So please drop some comments down there. Thank you for all the feedback and the interaction. I'm loving it. I'm trying to respond to everybody. But keep it coming. This is a blast. And I hope everybody's doing well, and I will talk to y'all soon.